Hello, people. This is Ali Go 55 again. Unfortunately, it left off while I was in the back. I was in the back over there talking about the problem with the police in our community. But my video was tampered with, I believe, because it was originally 17 minutes, but it got cut down to 4 minutes and 17 seconds. So I guess we can continue where we left off. First and foremost, everything I'm going to say needs to be changed immediately, or we just got to teach our future generation, like 5 and 10 year olds, things to uphold themselves better. This is mainly directed towards the black community or the minority communities. First and foremost, both there's no such thing either all. I mean, though you see all the police brutality and so on and so forth, not all cops are like that. Not all of them are like that. In fact, the vast majority are not like that. And even though you see a bunch of ignorant black folk doing a bunch of dumb shit, not all black folk are like that. But the negatives outweigh the positive. People focus on the negatives much more than they do the positives. So I'm not going to say the police are completely innocent in this factor. I'm not going to say that civilians are completely innocent in this by that factor. But we both have contributing factors. First off, for the police officers, they can't go into a neighborhood believing that everyone's the enemy, believing that they're risking, like, their life is at stake for simple calls and so on and so forth, because then they will ignore protocol. That's what's going on now. They're ignoring protocol into using lethal means on non-lethal situations. That's why you have pepper spray. That's why you have a taser. That's why you have a baton. That's why you have those things. The very last resort should be your gun, not the very first resort. And as far as blacks, just comply. I said this before. Comply, because at the end of the day, that cop is a person just like you, and that cop could very well have something done to them to make them act a certain way, because they're people. They're not super soldiers. They're not machines. They are people, just like you and me. So they get irritated. They get frustrated. They lose patience, just like you and me do. So they need to consider that. Another thing that I noticed, that a lot of these people would be like, well, people are rioting in the streets. Don't they have anything else better to do? Man, let's just out and say it. I'm just going to out and say it, because you basically just saying the same thing. Why don't those niggers get something else better to do? Because race is a huge factor in in the conversation or in the subject I'm explaining right now. Race is a huge factor, regardless of you want to believe it or not. And there is such thing as white privilege. There is such thing. So let's talk about these riots, shall we? A lot of people talk about the riots, but they forgot about the riots back in the 1960s, 1950s, 1940s, when other races, mainly blacks, were getting killed in the street and hung on display. Tulsa, Black Wall Street. I wish I had that list. I wish I did, but I don't offhand. But no one remembers those. No one wants to remember those. They want to sweep it underneath the rug as if it never happened. But these are protesters. Protesters at best. Looters at worst. Looters. But everyone wants to say, basically, all they're going to do is go home and collect their welfare checks, and so on and so forth. But what you don't acknowledge is what initially started the riot. The community's fed up. We're fed up of being targeted. We're fed up of being mistreated as people. We're fed up of being looked at as animals or less than a person. We're fed up as being looked at as a number. And I can say this from experience. So, of course, what is that going to do? We don't help each other. We don't help the cops. The cops don't help us. So it breaks a breach between the police, between law enforcement and the community that they swore to protect. It puts a division between the two. Next, I'm going to explain how you break a person, or how you break people, mainly blacks, and why slavery was never actually abolished. Slavery was just changed from being on a plantation to prisons.